Hey guys, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm a Lego representation of Toy Guru Neitlich. I've been in the toy industry for well over 2 decades, and I started this channel to answer questions about the toy industry, and questions I do get. So in particular, Ty Pemberton asked me about, regarding Marvel Legends, why they don't all use the most current buck. Basically, he's asking, when you upgrade figures and you create superior body types in a toy line, if you will, well, why isn't everything just upgraded immediately? Why are figures still coming out with older body types when, obviously, from the release of superior figures, there are better figures to use as a base buck? And just real quick, what I'm talking about when I say a base buck, that's a blank body used in creating action figures. So you can see here, you've got a blank body on the left, and then images on the right showing how that body can be modified with different parts: capes, hats, heads, belts, to make different characters. The buck is the core part. And a buck doesn't have to be, a superhero body. A buck could be something like a chainmail wearing body. This is a great example. We'll stick with Marvel Legends here, just because they're a colorful example. So the chainmail body that was started with Dread Knight was used for lots of characters, from goblins to, Serpent Society, etc., etc. But having a chainmail body, or in another case, a suit body, are also examples of a generic buck. So much like the chainmail that was used for Dread Knight, the suit body, originally for Coulson, has been used for lots of different characters, sometimes with ties, sometimes without ties, obviously some new parts. And sometimes unique bodies are created specifically for characters that can share this body. And a great example, again, we're going to use Marvel Legends, is the Hellfire Club, which utilized kind of a Victorian suit, but then was used not only for two figures in that set, but a third character, Wingard. Another example from across the aisle, well, across the the country that I worked on, was the Gentleman Ghost figure with the DC Universe Classics line. And when this figure came out, a lot of people said, "Oh, like that would be a great basic buck for the Joker. Have you considered that?" Well, yeah, that was in the plan from day one. This buck for Gentleman Ghost was designed even with the removable lapel flower, so we could swap it out for the Joker. Same thing in Marvel Legends. You find that characters can utilize pieces from previous ones, and a lot of times it is deliberately thought out ahead of time. So a character like the Falcon using the same wings for the Vulture. Obviously, I didn't work for Hasbro, but from my experience at Mattel, I know that we do think ahead of time, because these bucks are incredibly expensive to tool up. When you're tooling a full new figure, or, large pieces like wings, they can cost a lot of money. Now, sometimes you get sort of a, life just finds a way, if you will. So when Claw was added to the Black Panther series, he didn't use the standard suit buck that was created back with Agent Coulson, that was used like with characters like Watson there, because he needed to have a different type of shirt, the tie coming out, the sleeves rolled up, so he needed new parts. Well, happy accident, it turned out that body buck, was perfect for doing J. Jonah Jameson later on. It wasn't intended when they created Claw, like, oh, we'll get to do J. Jonah Jameson out of this, but it worked. It was a happy accident. So that happens too, and it continues to happen. Sometimes things are deliberate, sometimes they work out. A larger suit body was needed for Happy Hogan because he's got a more robust frame, if you will. So, no, I'm not saying he's fat, I'm saying he's big boned. And yes, so you can see how next to Tony Stark, he needed to look a little more broad-shouldered, and that broad-shouldered suit buck was perfect for updating Hammerhead versus that older Hammerhead that uses the older suit body. So happy accidents on Happy Hogan, sometimes purposeful. Usually, though, you have a standard. So the example in Marvel Legends for years has been the Bucky Cap figure. This character has been more action figures in Marvel Legends than probably any other. So much like that B sheet I showed earlier, new heads, new armor, new belts, new capes, and you can use a basic body to make a whole universe of characters. And it's a big cost saving for toy companies. All right, so that brings us back to the original question. When we have a new buck that's introduced, so in this case, the Marvel Legends Vulcan figure here on the right, was the first time that a fully non-pinned, meaning you don't see the pins holding the joints together, buck was introduced. And the idea was this was going to be the buck going forward. But then the question is, okay, if you have a superior non-pin buck, why are we still getting characters that use the old body types with the pin joints? And in fact, sometimes characters taking shortcuts or, cutting corners when a better body type might work out. Obviously, the Vulcan body is available, so shouldn't it just be applied to every figure going forward because it's superior? And the answer is, well, kind of a no with an if and a but. In the case of this box set, and let's kind of look at some of them, Silvermane here, not quite on model. I mean, if you actually look at Silvermane in his, cyborg form, the chest is a little different. It's got those wires coming out the top, and there's actually would have been a lot of deco hits to do the version from the 90s with all those little knobs and, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, we get a all-silver version, which works. It's not quite 100% accurate. And the reason being is tooling. Tooling, as I've noted many times, is incredibly expensive. We're talking $100,000 for a fully tooled figure to make the one-time mold, that capital investment. And you're going to decide how much you get, well, rather management will, based on how much you're predicted to sell. So it's a formula. Sales equals tooling. The more you sell, the more tooling will be allocated. And so sometimes for these large 5-packs that are sold online, not as much tooling is allocated because the numbers just don't crunch. You can't say, oh, this pack is going to sell this number of units, so we can only justify this amount of tooling, which means shortcuts have to get taken. So, for example, the buck for Silvermane came from, well, actually didn't come from this pack, it's just recognizable. You can see Ultron here using that same body, but with some more deco hits on all those red knobs, which actually came from an earlier figure of Beetle. So yes, this buck has been sitting around for years and has now gone on to become Ultron and Silvermane in the Marvel Legends line. I bet they never thought of that when they were creating it. Another example from this same set is Molten Man. A lot of fans have said he should have been on a at least bigger, broader shouldered buck as opposed to kind of the thinner body. Again, why didn't he just get the buck from Vulcan? Because it's superior, it's available, and it would have been a better fit for Molten Man's body type. He's not that thin. Well, in this case, the reason is they wanted to use the hands that had flame effects, which were available with the Johnny Storm Fantastic Four figure. And not all of the parts are universal with Marvel Legends. You can't just plug in any hands into any buck. Unfortunately, more is the pity. I've always been a big fan of having universal joints so that you could specifically swap out parts. It's something I really pushed for when I was brand managing Masters of the Universe Classics, because swapping heads, swapping parts is great. In fact, on the new Motu Origins line, they do that more than ever, and I really applaud that. You can swap limbs and body pieces like crazy in that line. All right, so the final reason why a universal buck or an updated buck is not always used is the fact that they're really expensive to store and really expensive to move around. So you have to look at the setup time for creating a pack, meaning when the vendor is going to set up and train the team that's going to make this figure, and they have to pull all of the tooling needed. So in this case, they needed to find that Beetle/Ultron body for Silvermane and the Fantastic Four body for doing Molten Man. So arranging all of this, pulling it out of storage, making sure they actually still work because tools do wear out, let alone setting up the assembly line, setting up and retraining the team to paint these figures. Even though, yes, I know Silvermane and Molten Man don't have that much deco, but that's not important right now. The point is, everything that gets done for setting up an assembly line, whether you've got humans, robots, or mongooses running the line, it's a huge financial investment, and this is where a lot of the expense for the vendor happens, which is why sometimes corners have to be cut. And you can't always go with the most updated body buck because you have to think of how much money the set's going to be make, and is the squeeze worth the juice for all the effort to put together another buck when is it really going to affect sales? Will you sell that many more units if they tooled up 100% body for Silvermane or done a bigger body for Molten Man? Would they have sold that many more sets? Maybe, but it's, exponential. Other examples you've found were figures that should have had a different buck that was available and curious why it didn't. Did this video clarify and shed some light? I hope it did. Let me know in the comments below, and as always, the best thing you can do for this channel to support is to share these videos with others. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.